Well, the last video was about divining, mostly for water, buried pipes. Well, water and pipes isn't the only thing you can divine for. There's quite a few things, and in my case, in my late teens and going through part of my adulthood, it seemed as if my body itself became a lightning rod to haunted buildings. Yes, if I approached a building that was haunted, I would know it often before I ever even stepped in the front door. If the haunt was a mild one, I just feel a presence. There'd be a heaviness in the air and I could detect it. But in the case of buildings that were acutely haunted, very horrific type situations, it was difficult for me to even enter the front door. The feeling was oppressive. My eyes would water. I'd have a hard time thinking, seeing. It was almost a physical presence pushing me back and out. I remember it happened to me one time when a buddy of mine, Scotty, Scotty was always falling for something or another. He was the sax player for one of my bands. And anyway, Scotty had gotten himself this big old brick house, in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and he'd gotten it cheap as a rental. They had rented the place. And, he's having a housewarming party, and he invited all his friends over, and I was included. So I took a drive up to Crystal Lake. I parked out front of the house and looked up at the place and said, oh, man, yeah, that is quite a building. It was very large, fairly old architecture, all brick. Anyway, big old huge porch. I strode up the steps and knocked on the door, and Scotty come to the door and goes, hey, Bill, all right, you're here. Hey, welcome, come on in. But man, it was like surf on a beach. It hit me coming out the door. I almost fell over. My eyes began to tear. I was having a hard time seeing, and Scotty's going, hey, man, what's up? What's wrong, eh? Scotty, your house, it's haunted, man. He goes, well, I don't know, the neighbors tell us some strange stories here, but, I didn't notice nothing, I said, well, your house is haunted, Buster. And so he let me in, and we started taking a walk around. He'd give me the full tour, top to bottom, Now, one of the things about the place was incredibly strange. It had old furniture, old wallpaper, old fixtures. Everything in the place was old. It had been completely furnished, and it looked as if, like maybe in the 1940s, somebody'd locked the door on the place and walked away, and nobody'd been in there, and this was like in the 1970s. It was, and anyway, that's the way the place looked. Everything was sitting exactly, I think, where they just left it whenever whoever died, passed away, they locked the house. Well, he's taking me around the place, and I'm telling him, man, this place creeps me out. There were paintings. This person was a painter, and the paintings were strange. I mean, now I'm not talking weird abstract. We're talking creepy, shadowy figures coming out of darkness. Demonic shapes, really, really dark stuff. And the artist wasn't even really that good as an artist, passable enough, that was it. Well, I found that pretty creepy. Those were in the basement, most of them. There were paintings down in the basement. But then Scotty says, well, come on, let me show you the attic, man. It's got a big attic. All right, so we go heading on upstairs, and man, I could not hardly get up past the last steps on the landing to enter that attic. The pressure was so intense that I said, Scotty, I really can't come up here. There's something here. And this guy says, well, yeah, the neighbors said that the person who owned this place was really creepy, weird, and they used to sit in this attic and play weird music on an organ. I said, yeah, I could tell you that. And there were also paintings in the attic that were weird again. Anyway, I didn't stay for Scotty's party. After he showed me the place, I bailed. I couldn't hang in the house. It wasn't possible. The presence was too obnoxious. That was one of my earlier experiences as being a lightning rod for haunts. Many years later, I was living in northern Wisconsin. I was working for a wood window manufacturer in Hawkins, Wisconsin, on Route 8, way up north there, about 85 miles south of Lake Superior. Yeah, I was in the maintenance shop, and so because of that, I'd get around the plant. I also happened to have been a union steward for them, so I had to deal with all sorts of people at different times. One of the characters that I worked with, a guy named Virgil Breezy. Virgil Breezy had a huge family. I don't know how many children. I don't know if Breezy knew how many, honestly. Now, he had discovered a very large house, probably the biggest one in town, in Hawkins, which is where the window plant was at, where Breezy worked. And it had plenty of rooms for all those children. And apparently the price wasn't too bad. In Hawkins, anybody out there listening, you all know this as the Johnson House. Yeah, it was the Johnson House. Probably the biggest one in Hawkins. I don't know the history, and my guess is he had something to do with lumber and logging, but I don't know. Anyway, so, I was talking to Breezy one time about some issue he was having at work. It was a union thing. I was at lunch, and the conversation shifted then from the issue to Breezy telling me ghost stories about this house that he'd bought. The most impressive story of all, I do believe, and I believe this happened more than once to him too. That is that Virg would wake up in the middle of the night in this place, and he'd have to head on down to the men's room down the hallway and take a leak. Well, he'd be out there walking down the hallway, and there'd be a little girl standing in the hallway. And so Breezy'd go walk by her, figuring, it was one of his random daughters. And he'd go, "Oh, what are you doing here?" "Oh, you go on back to bed. Go on back to bed." And the kid would walk away, start to walk away. But then when he reached out to touch the kid, it wasn't there. There was no kid. Okay. Well, apparently, according to Breezy, this child in the hallway at night happened more than once to him. He would bump into children in the night. There was an incident where the child showed up next to his wife at the kitchen sink while she was washing dishes again. I don't know what it is about washing dishes and ghosts, but that happened. The child was also visualized a ghostly image in front of the house in the street playing with a ball. This particular ghost seemed to exist both in and outside the house, anywhere near proximity. Story goes that the Johnson family had a young daughter sometime in the 20th century. The daughter had contracted a fever and died in the house. And that is what they attribute the haunt to, the passing daughter, because the haunt's always seen as a small child that actually visualizes. Well, so Breezy, I told him, I tend to be a lightning rod for ghosts. If a house is haunted, I can oftentimes tell. And he says, good, because I'm trying to decide whether I'm crazy or not. Come on by after work. I did, and whereas I did not witness any small children, et cetera, or anything go bump, the house had a presence. There was a feeling in that house that there was just something there that was always watching. You just couldn't get away from it. So I confirmed to Breezy he wasn't nuts. No, he'd bought a haunted house, which is an interesting thing. I know when I took business law in college, something that one of the studies that we did was about real estate and the selling of haunted buildings. This is pretty interesting because most of us don't really believe in ghosts, or a lot of us don't even believe this exists. Yet it does. Okay, it has since as far back as we can remember. I mean, we got ghost stories from the Greeks, from the Egyptians, from the Romans. Okay, there's ghost stories everywhere. Ancient China, it doesn't matter. The ghost is ubiquitous and universal, and when something is like that, well, let's just say it probably is, Yet most of us don't really think that this is real stuff. But when it comes to real estate, if you know you live in a haunted house, and if the house has been documented, a TV show or magazine article or something, newspaper article even, if it's been documented and you sell it without disclosing the haunt, you're in violation. And I don't, these laws I think are probably statewide. The one we studied was in a certain state, I don't recall. But you can't sell a haunted house without letting the buyers know that the house has been reported to be haunted. That's how seriously this stuff gets taken at the legal level. At the legal level, ghosts have standing. Or lack of. Yeah. All righty. Y'all hang loose. So much for divining, huh?